Now, for some of us, the adventure looks different. It's not mountain bikes and kayaks, Barbara. For some of us, it's doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. Hey, man, it's an adventure. It's about perspective. It doesn't have to be like, it is radical because it's a supernatural thing that we're doing and carrying and that we're proclaiming. But it doesn't have to be radical in the natural. I mean, what you've been called to and what you follow and what you believe is already a radical thing. God clothed, he came down off of his throne, essentially. And the second person of his being, his son, Yeshua Jesus. And he humbled himself and put himself in this body, in a fleshly body, not this one. I mean, the spirit's here now. You guys get the point. He chose to humble himself and walk among men. His creation, the creator, came down and clothed himself in the creation and then died on a cross for us, was buried. I mean, he died, right? The human body, fully human, fully man, fully God. The God-man, Jesus Christ. He died and then was raised up again on the third day. And then he walked around for 40 days, teaching, revealing himself, and then went up and ascended to the Father. And he's coming back soon. So the thing that we believe in is radical. Yeah? Pretty radical. So whether you're sharing this at your doctor's appointment, or at Kroger, or on the adventure trail, it's an adventure. One thing that we forget, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I think, and a struggle for us, is a reality that you're not doing it alone. You're not doing it alone. You're doing it with God. You're doing it in relationship. He doesn't expect you to do it by yourself. He actually doesn't even want you to do it by yourself. He wants you to do it with him. Right? And in Matthew chapter 7, Jesus said, there will be many that will come to me on that day, it's the day of judgment, the day of his return, and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do X, Y, Z in your name? Right? Didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do the work that we've been called to in your name? And Jesus said, I will say to them, depart from me, I never knew you. Making it very clear that he doesn't expect you to do this radical work and walk in this adventure by yourself. Like the whole reason for your existence is relationship. Within the Godhead itself, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, there was always perfect relationship. And because God needs something to, or love, I should say, God is love, and love needs something to direct its attention to, right? Love outside of something to love on is nothing. That is the definition of love, is to express my concern and emotions and life with. So God wanting relationship with you, like that's the purpose and the reason of existence. That's why we have a planet. That's why God put grass on it and water on it and teeming fish in the seas and birds in the air and all of the things that he did, right? And then he created man and put man on it and said, cultivate this thing. And then he came down and did it with them. And that's still his plan, right? That's what sin is. Sin shattered the relationship. It broke it. So Jesus came down to mend it, so that we could be back in relationship with him. So one thing that we've got to remember is, yes, we're called to adventure, and I want you to get this. but it's not on your own. And I know it can be really hard for us because we feel like sometimes we're on our own in it, but we're not. He's with us. Do you hear me? Introvert, extrovert, He's with you. Jesus said, if they reject the words you speak, it's not your words they're rejecting, it's mine. So if you share with somebody the life-giving words that only Yeshua has, only Jesus has, and they reject it, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting Christ in you, the hope of glory. So you can be okay. And the reality is you'll be rejected, and it's okay. But people need you. I love this. A couple weeks ago, I shared a quote from an Old Testament theologian. He said, the world doesn't need your inward holiness. The world doesn't need your inward. You need your inward holiness, your inward relationship with God. And the inward holiness that's developed through that relationship, you need it, we need it. The world doesn't need that. I mean, it does in the sense that it needs you to express it outwardly to the world. The world needs your actions. There's a word in Hebrew, mitzvah or mitzvot, and it means commands or good deeds, really, is what it translates to. The world needs your good deeds. Now you might say, well, I'm not saved by my works. That's right, you're not saved by your works. You're saved by faith in Jesus and alone faith in Him. But Jesus also said, let your good deeds be done before man in such a way that they glorify your Father in heaven. In his Hebrew tongue, he would have been saying, let your mitzvot be done before people in such a way that God sees them. I love it. Like when we walk in these good deeds of obedience with God, we're walking with Him, not apart from Him. So what the text I've been sharing from this call to adventure is from Genesis chapter 12, and it's the life of Abram, who ends up, God changes his name to Abraham. And for those of you that haven't been here, God speaks to Abram, and then we see that Abram doesn't seem to be obedient right away. That he moves a little bit to a place called Haran, and he stays there for a while. And then his father dies at 205 years old, and then Abram seems to finally be obedient to God at 75 years old. So if we kind of examine the text and look at it, it looks like Abram was partially obedient, which is no obedience at all, a little bit. And then finally he enters in to this call to adventure. Right? He moved a little bit out from his home and kind of stayed in the culture. Because when he moved from Babylon and Mesopotamia to Haran, Haran was still a Mesopotamian city. Very much the same culture, the same gods, and all the same worship, and all of that. So he just moved from one place to another within the same. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Like we prayed a prayer because we heard God speak to us. And we moved just a little bit, but we never actually entered into the fullness of the call. Like Haran, the name Haran in the Hebrew is interesting, that the definition of it's interesting. It's a desolate place. It's a place that's empty of God. It's dry. And when I talked about this the last time, a couple of weeks ago, I said, to think about being in the fullness of God's presence, it's really scary. It's a heavy place. I think if we're real with ourselves, we know that it is. And to really follow him completely and be where he is you're going to be exposed. There's going to be a requirement. It's a heavy thing. So I'm going to start back at 12. If you don't mind standing for the honor of the word, if you're able. And I'm just going to walk through this a little bit. We ended the last time at verse 4. So we're going to move a little bit beyond that. Who knows how far we'll get? We'll see. It's been a few weeks now, and we've made it to verse 4D. We're not in a hurry, are we? The only thing I'm in a hurry for, you want to know what I'm in a hurry for, Greg? To see my King face to face. That's the only thing I'm in a hurry for. The rest of it, yeah. Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all of the families of the earth will be blessed. Please be seated. So this same call, in a way, is your call. Now, you're not Abram, and you're not going, like, your descendants aren't going to be the Jewish people. They're not, but in a way, it's you. You have the opportunity to be a blessing and to have sons and daughters and to be the father or mother of many nations by pouring in and sowing into people and partnering with Yeshua, with Jesus in this walk, in this adventure. Think of this. You can have and I used to run from this. You can have a life that's really effective. At the end of the day, that's what I want. I want a life that affects other people's lives in a very positive way. Like the money, fame, whatever, keep it. Man, I want to leave a legacy that is effectual and powerful for lives that I encounter. Above anything. And in doing that, I become the father of many nations. Because what I pour into them, they pour into somebody else, and so on and so on and so on. And that's an opportunity. That's the call that we've been called to, this call of adventure. So I used to run from responsibility, but you can have an effective life that will affect others' lives. And I can tell you this, I'm warning you now, it will be full of work and responsibility. Or you can have a life that is ineffective and you can sit on your tuchus, your rear end, and do nothing. It's your call, it's your choice. It's a beautiful thing of free will. We have free will. So we have the opportunity. And the reality is and let me pause here for a second, because I spent a lot of time, and I will continue to do so, and it will be something that I continue to bring to the front of the words that I share. There are rewards for you to come. There are eternal rewards. I promise you, they are real. Jesus spoke of them a lot. They are real. The resurrection is real. You will be raised up in your body, and you will reign and rule with Christ on this earth for 1,000 years. And then there will be a new heaven and a new earth where you will continue to reign in real relationship, not ethereal, not spiritual, not something that you can't grasp and understand, but something very graspable and very understandable, and that should motivate you. It's real. Because anything else doesn't make sense. And that's why it doesn't encourage or inspire anybody. It's because if you think you're just going to be a disembodied spirit floating around forever and ever, it doesn't connect with you, does it? Doesn't connect with me. You know why? Because I wasn't created that way. If God wanted to create me as a disembodied spirit, then that's what He would have done from the beginning. He created you a spirit and a body to do work. So we can partner in this call. The same. I mean, Jesus, right? This is the first. This is the call, and I've already expressed it earlier. Jesus said, "Follow me," a call to adventure, and I will make you fishers of men. There was some disciples of John the Baptist, and they said, "Where do you stay?" He said, "Foxes have holes, and birds have nests. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Come and see. Come and check it out." There's a cost of discipleship that he talks about, right? Like anybody who loves father or mother, brother or sister more than me isn't fit to be my disciple. Like if we back up, right? Leave your relatives, your father's house, all the land. Like what means most to you? What means most to you? I can tell you from experience, like when I chose to leave all those things behind and I began to walk, like those other things came because they saw the light. They saw the great light in the darkness. I remember going, my wife and I accidentally booked us a trip to Dallas. That's where she's from. I was looking to bring her mother from Dallas to here to visit us, to Detroit. And then I looked, and we went out to mountain bikes and, out to the desert to do some off-roading. And I accidentally booked a flight from Dallas to Vegas. So we could, not that we stayed in Vegas, we get out of there as quick as possible. We went out to the desert. But then I realized, oh my gosh, I booked this from Dallas and I couldn't refund the ticket. So I booked us a flight to Dallas from Detroit. We ended up spending a week there. And as we touched her family, because of the light that we carried, is amazing. I mean, her mother said, "Man, I don't know who you two are, but I see what's going on in your life, and I see it, and I want it." And it totally changed her life. And it changed her cousin's life. And it changed her aunt's boyfriend's life. The man quit drinking. Alcoholic for years. So this is the thing that we carry. This is a call to adventure that we have. And I'm not boasting in myself, hear me. Because I know it's nothing that I've done in me. It's what He's done in me. And it's what He's done in you and what He wants to carry and bring in you. He wants you to be fathers and mothers of many nations. He wants all the nations of the earth to be blessed through you. But you've got to walk the call. You got to follow Him. Some of us are still stuck in Haran and we got to go. You don't want to be 75 years old and still sitting. Now, I know some of you are that old or older, and that you don't misunderstand the point, right? The point is you don't want to be stagnant forever. Now's the time. So Abram went forth finally, as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed Haran. If we go to Acts chapter 7, we know that actually God had called Abram all the way in Mesopotamia in Babylon. Stephen actually says it in Acts chapter 7. Like Abram was called by God when he was still in Babylon in Mesopotamia. So he only went part of the way and then stopped for a while, right? And was there for a while, and finally he leaves in obedience, right? And this, I want you to hear this. So he heard the Lord. The Lord spoke to Abram. And then he finally began to move. Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his nephew, and all their possessions, which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran. So they were gaining a lot of good stuff in Haran, right? They gained possessions. Abram became wealthy in Haran. Some of us got so far that we've gotten wealthy and we think, oh, well, that was the blessing. But that wasn't the blessing. That wasn't far enough. That wasn't where God wanted you to go. He wants you to go further. He doesn't want you to see him. And it made sense to Abram in his natural mind. Well, you said I would be blessed and be a blessing to all the nations in the earth. So obviously, if I'm gaining wealth, if I'm getting rich, that must be the blessing, right? Some of us might be there today. Well, gosh, you told me if I did this, then I would be rich. Yeah, but he didn't necessarily mean that you would be rich with money. You know, it's interesting. This. It's funny because some of you know I'm studying my master's in divinity, and right now I'm in a historical theology class, and we've talked about the monastic movement, the monks, and the movement early on in Christendom was an ascetic life, or a life of poverty, and they would take these vows of poverty and all this stuff. And then it's interesting because today we have the opposite of that. We have the prosperity gospel. So some people buy that stuff. Some people buy it. And they think, well, I'm getting rich. Yeah, but what about your neighbor that curses God, that's an atheist, that doesn't even, so they say so-called they don't believe that God exists, that has the bigger house than you have? So what does that mean for them? That's a challenging thought, right? Maybe their TV's bigger than yours. So he finally sets out with all of his possessions. And they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. And Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem to the oaks of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. So he begins to move south into Canaan. And then there's a bunch of people there. So some of us begin to move where God's called us to, and we see there's already a bunch of people there, so we stop and we're like, well, this can't be it. But look at what happens in his obedience. Now the Lord appeared to Abram. So he went from hearing God speak to God appearing to him. So in our obedience, as we begin to move in obedience, like the level of revelation, the level of God appearing to us from just speaking to us, or God's presence in our life as we move forward in obedience increases. Some of us say, man, I remember when I was younger, or I remember this time or that time God spoke to me. I used to hear his voice so clearly, or he would give me these dreams. He would, all of these things, and I don't know why it's not happening now. And it could be because you stopped being obedient. It may not be that. He may just be wanting to increase your faith. But it could be that you stopped somewhere, that you've been stuck in Haran, that you didn't keep moving forward. And a good thing to do is to say, hey, God, is there something that you told me to do that I didn't listen to? Is there a place where I wasn't obedient to you? Should I have called that person and apologized? Is there something I should have said to somebody that I didn't say? Is there something I should have done that I didn't do? Am I sitting on something that I'm not supposed to sit on? Was I supposed to do that 3-day fast and I didn't do it? Now the beautiful thing is that God's full of grace and mercy. I love it when he reveals himself to Moses, because Moses cries out, God, show me thy glory. And God says, well, you can't really see me, but I'm gonna make my name pass by you. And he gives Moses revelation of who he is through his name. And the very first thing that God says is, I am gracious, I am rachum. I am gracious. I'm kind, I'm patient, I'm merciful. It expresses his mercy and his gracious and his grace and his goodness first. Then he says, but I won't strive with you forever. So if you're in that place today and you're like, man, he used to speak to me so clearly. And I'll give you a personal, so there was somebody that I handled a situation, and what I did, like the way me handling that situation was right, but the way that I handled it was wrong. Anybody ever been there? So, and this was a while ago, and about, I don't know, a couple months ago, I was sitting before the Lord in the morning, and he spoke to me to call and apologize. And I found the number. There was two people, and I found their numbers. My wife had them and gave them to me. And I've been meaning to, and life's been busy, and then I pulled into Kroger, and I was getting stuff for our dinner. And I pulled into Kroger, and the thought came to me, which is revelation. That's God speaking to you, right? The thought came to me out of nowhere. That's revelation. The thought came to me. Like, listen, that's enough. Like, you don't need to think about it and pray about it for another week. The thought came to you. It's enough. Trust that you're hearing from God, right? So the thought came to me, and I thought for a second, well, I'll do that as soon as I get out of the grocery store. And then I said, no, I'll do it right now. So I picked up the phone, and I reached out, and I apologized. And the first person that I called, and they were like, this is really amazing, because the Lord had me reading this morning about if your brother calls you asking for your forgiveness, to forgive them. And it was really amazing to see God work. So the point is that there might be something like this in your life where, and I won't get into it too much, but just apologizing or asking forgiveness or forgiving doesn't mean that you enter back into a perfect relationship with that person, because you might not be able to. That just means releasing them or being released to debt and humbling yourself. Humbling yourself. So that might be why you haven't heard from the Lord in a while. And as you continue to be obedient to Him, the point is, like in this adventure, and you're not doing it by yourself, right? I wasn't doing it by myself. God was speaking to me. And He was there with me, and His grace was on it. And I can tell you, the Lord used that moment to deliver me in a deeper way. In a deeper way. I can tell you, that was a few weeks ago, and man, it was a hindrance. It was a block in my relationship. It's tangible, the increase from the moment. Like, if you ever entered into obedience to God and you literally feel like the instant, like, freedom. I felt it. It's been beautiful. So in this obedience to God, like the revelation increases. His unlocking of His word to you increases. The depth of His nature and heart to you increases. I love this thought. Like, so there's a couple of different accounts, and there's one where, Lord willing, we'll get to in Abram's life. The account of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram gets in a conversation with God and says, well, will you just still destroy the city if there's 50 righteous people? Right? A lot of you probably know. And he gets down to 10 righteous people. And here's a question for you to ponder. Was it Abram changing God's heart? Or was it God changing Abram's heart? Was Abram's heart more compassionate than God's? So Abram's compassionate heart changed God's heart? Or did God use that moment to actually create compassion in Abram's life? I think it's pretty obvious. God doesn't change. So I think he used that testing. He's using it in our lives too. And this is that obedience and in that relationship that makes sense. And then I love this. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Then he proceeded from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent. How many of us are building houses and pitching altars instead of building altars and pitching tents? How many of us have made the house the altar and not, I mean, you see this. And Abram actually ends up coming back after some misfortune to that altar that he built. And I relate it to your life like this. So let me. I'm going to read this a little bit. This is the Hebrew word for altar, is mizbech, and it comes from the root zavach. It means to slaughter, sacrifice, or offer. It means a place of sacrifice. Now, sacrifice in the Hebrew is korban, and it means to draw near to God. That's the Hebrew word, definition of the word. We think sacrifice means to give something up, but in its definition, an offering or sacrifice, like your tithes and your offerings, that is an opportunity to draw near to God. It's not a giving up, it's a drawing near. I mean, it is a giving up and it's a making space, because that's what we as humans try to do. We try to conquer time by filling up space. But when we fill up space and we don't allow space for God to come, for us to draw near to him. So this altar is a place to draw near to God. Now here's a real-time application that you can put to your life. So finally, after 40 years in the wilderness, Moses dies and Joshua is called to lead Israel into the promised land. And God splits the Jordan. And then he tells Joshua, tell the priests to gather 12 stones and to carry them through the Jordan. And when they get to the other side, the 12 stones represents 12 tribes of Israel, to build a memorial out of them. And they are memorial stones. They're an altar. And he says, Joshua, the reason I'm having you do this is so that when you're in the land and things are going good or things are going bad and your children ask me, why are those stones there? You can tell them because God, the only God, he delivered us out of Egypt. He walked us through a sea on dry land. And then he kept us in this wilderness for 40 years. Our shoes didn't even wear out. Man, he provided everything we needed. He made bread rain down out of heaven for us. We never were hungry. So you can remind your children and yourselves who God is. So Abram realizes, okay, God's called me to an adventure and it's going to be really hard. And he's shown me that I'm not alone in it because he spoke to me and then he appeared to me. And the word in Hebrew, appeared, va'era, it means appeared. Like he manifested himself to Abram. And so he says, okay, I'm not alone in this, and I'm going to build this altar, this place of sacrifice, this place of drawing near to God. And we'll see in a few verses that after trouble comes, and he goes back to that place where God appeared to him. And it's interesting because it wasn't until he was obedient and then got to the place and the land was full of enemies that God said, okay, Abram, look around because this is the land that I'm giving to you. And he says, well, wait a minute. There's already people here in his mind, right? Like, wait a second. How are you going to give this to me? It's already full of people, and they're strong people. And you remember the spies that were sent out by Joshua to spy, by Moses to spy the land. And they thought, well, those guys are big. They're scary. Yeah, it's a fruitful land, but it's scary because it's full, there were only two that believed, Joshua and Caleb. So we got to build these altars to remember what God did for us. These memorial stones. And they need to be permanent. Like the provision that came to you is temporary. But the altar that you build around it needs to be permanent. Does that make sense? Like, praise God that you needed a car and God gave you a car when you needed it. It's happened to me. And I gave that car away, and it was smashed, and I called it my memorial stone. It got smashed a few times, and I loved it. I left it smashed as much as I could because it was a witness of what God had done in my life and how He had used the hard things even to move me forward and how it's been an adventure. I said yes to Him in 2014, and it's been an adventure. And I keep saying yes. And guys, don't forget, maybe some of you, it's been 50 years that you said yes. It's still an adventure. The adventure may look different now than it did then, but it's still an adventure. And I want to remind you to make an adventure. I want to remind you to look at the things that you prayed about and He answered and make a memorial stone. Build a permanent altar around those things. Don't make the provision the permanent structure. Make your worship of God the permanent thing. It's an adventure. Adventures are full of hard things. They're full of good things. They're full of challenges. They're full of blessing. That's the point of an adventure. Think of the guy with his adventure bike out here. So it's got like knobby tires. Because when you ride an adventure bike off-road, you run into mud. It's got really hefty suspension. Because when you ride your adventure bike off-road, you're going to hit some really big dips and valleys and hills and rocks and boulders. So it's not just going to be flat, smooth, easy sailing like we would like. But Jesus said, narrow, uphill, hard is the way that leads to life. And there'll be few that find it. Like broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many will find it. And He's not talking about the world that doesn't even claim that God exists. He was talking to the church. He was talking to disciples, to believers. Many believers will choose to take the smooth, easy way that leads to destruction. Not as many will choose to take the hard path that leads to life. But, again, you've been called to be fathers and mothers of many nations. And I can tell you now, it's when that happens, there's rocky road that comes with it. But man, it's an adventure, and you got to remember you're not in it alone. God's with you. He'll speak to you. He'll appear to you. He'll bring people around you to encourage you, to strengthen you. He'll bring people around you to challenge you. But it's an adventure. I've realized, I'm going to share this and then I'll pray. A lot of our problem is perspective. A lot of our problem is perspective. You guys know the glass half empty, half full. And because of our fallen nature and the wrestle that we have internally, Paul, thank you, Lord, for Paul. He said, I do the thing that I don't want to do, and I don't do the thing that I do want to do. And he came to the conclusion, he said that I realize that it's no longer I that sins, but it's sin that lives in me. So if you say there's no wrestling in you, I don't know. It's not what the Bible says. And it's okay that you're wrestling. Keep going, because through Paul, God also said, we can be confident of this, that He who began a good work in me will complete it till the day of Christ revealing. And I cling to that verse. I get that tattooed on my forehead so I see it every time I look in the mirror. Philippians 1:6. He's doing it in me. So He's doing it. He's doing it in you. He's doing it with you. You're not alone. You're called to an adventure. And wherever you go, He's with you. Say that. Wherever I go, God, you're with me. Wherever I go, there you are. You know, there's a Hebrew name for, God's got these covenant names that are revealed throughout Scripture. And one of His covenant names is Yahweh Shammah. And it means the God who is there. So everywhere you go, I love this, God's already there. Anywhere you go, God is already there. He said, I'll never leave you, never forsake you. Let's run with him, amen?